Regardless of anything that I'm going to say in this video, Akira is a landmark film and it's earned its place in anime history. It opened the eyes of many Westerners, including myself, to how breathtaking and mature animation could be. It came out in an era where cartoons were primarily aimed at children, which gave them the reputation of being a medium for kids only. This is one of the many pieces of animation that helped challenge that reputation and show that it can be made for adults as well. Akira has done so much to popularise and legitimise anime, and I feel that because of this, many fans ignore the flaws in its storytelling. The pacing is so quick that it's hard to keep up, and the narrative is convoluted, while at the same time having certain plot elements and characters that are very underdeveloped. It seems like they tried to shove so much into the film that I started to wonder, does the manga that it's based on have these same problems, or is it simply that the anime is a poor adaptation of it? I've wondered this for ages, and to finally quell my curiosity on it, I decided to read the manga to see how it differs from the movie. So, hello and welcome to Anime Memories, and on this episode, I'm going to be talking about Akira. I know that most likely everyone has heard about the plot to this, but just in case there's someone who hasn't, it takes place 31 years after World War III in a rebuilt version of Tokyo. Similar to many post-apocalyptic settings, crime and gang activity are incredibly high, and one of these gangs is led by the protagonist Kaneda. During a battle with a rival biker group, Tetsuo, one of Kaneda's friends, crashes his bike when he encounters a kid with psychic powers. As a result, he starts manifesting psychic abilities himself, and after he escapes from the facility where he was being held, he goes on a rampage while looking for another superpowered kid called Akira. Before I get into the manga, I'm going to quickly go over my thoughts on the film in more detail so we have a good basis for comparison. In terms of the technical aspects, it's outstanding. It had an infamously high budget, and you can see it with how well the visuals hold up. It's amazing that they were able to make something that looks like this as far back as the late 80s. The soundtrack is excellent as well. It makes use of unsettling chanting as well as chimes and synthetic sounds to create an otherworldly atmosphere. Where it all starts to fall apart is the story, which was too difficult to follow. Unless you're paying careful attention to every line of exposition, you're going to end up getting lost, and even if you are paying attention, you still may end up confused. I know I sure did. I couldn't understand what was going on when I saw it as a child, and I still had a lot of trouble understanding it now. What holds everything up is the relationship between Kaneda and Tetsuo. Their friendship was built up nicely, giving it a good sense of tragedy when Tetsuo starts going crazy and their close bond ends up getting broken. Everyone outside of the two leads though was pretty bland. Probably because the plot took up so much screen time, the character development was pushed to the side. Despite its drawbacks though, I still love this movie. It was a big part of my childhood and I had a lot of fun watching it again. So, with that out of the way, how does it compare to the manga? When I started reading, I was fairly surprised that the first chapter plays out reasonably similar to the film. It isn't exact, but it hits many of the same story beats. You've got the psychic kid blowing up parts of the city, the gang riding along the highway, Tetsuo's bike blowing up when he encounters the psychic kid, and the crappy school that the gang go to. However, the manga has a fair amount of extra content that didn't make it into the anime. It has additional world building where the characters go to see the crater that was made when the original Tokyo was destroyed, and the other gang members have more presence and personality since they're given more lines. This is the case for the entire movie. It contains some of the major events, but misses all the small details. There's a lot of character development and well-written dialogue that wasn't included. Also, the parts of the story that they do cover are given much more depth and focus in the manga, whereas in the film, they rush through them very quickly. But honestly, all of this was to be expected. With any kind of adaptation, there's going to have to be changes. Things are going to have to be cut or rewritten because of time restraints, or because a scene that worked in one medium may not necessarily work in another. So if we wound up missing a number of intricacies when this was adapted, I'm okay with that, since what truly matters is whether they are able to translate the main plot points and the themes from the manga over to the film. So, starting with the plot, does the anime do a good job at telling the story of the manga? No. Absolutely fucking not. They did the best they could with the 2-hour limit they had. However, it still doesn't change the fact that the narrative is an absolute mess. A lot of it is poorly explained, and I found myself asking why pretty frequently. Why is this happening? Why is this character doing this? Why is this organisation making these dangerous decisions? Some of the questions I had may have been explained at some point in the film, but it's not done very well, and I didn't fully understand all the answers until I read the manga. Then there's the stuff they left out, and boy, there's a shit ton. I'm not sure of the exact amount, but it feels like half the chapters had most of their content cut out, while the rest of the chapters were cut entirely. I know I said I was okay with changes and adaptations, but they left out almost everything. It makes me wonder if this was even worth trying to make into a movie. The manga is awesome. I was so engrossed in it that I read all 38 chapters in the matter of about 3 days. And what we got here is a bare bones retelling of it with only a small percentage being retained. It definitely doesn't live up to how great the original narrative was. As I mentioned before, the only part that I thought was done reasonably well was the friendship and betrayal subplot between Kaneda and Tetsuo. Like everything else, it's trimmed down considerably, however, they kept in enough of it to make you feel saddened by how they become enemies when they used to be best friends. Every other part of the story, though, was totally gutted. Since the plot was butchered to hell, you might be thinking that the anime also butchered the themes of the manga, right? Actually, no. I found that those were adapted very well. One example of a theme that was translated competently is how attempting to play God can backfire considerably. In both the manga and the film, there are people that attempt to use Akira and the kids with psychic powers in order to create a new world or become the leader of Neo Tokyo, and their plans usually fail. Then we have the negative effects of human experimentation. The Japanese government tried to study these kids to see if their telepathy could be used as a weapon. However, all it did was cause a bunch of destruction. Finally, we have the risk of being consumed by power. While the movie removed a large chunk of the characters' personalities, one trait that was kept in was their greed. Regardless of how privileged they are, a large portion of the cast will often try and use underhanded tactics in order to improve their position even further, which almost always ends up with them losing everything. While the anime was not able to come close to properly telling the plot of the manga, it was able to include the main ideas and messages, which counts for a lot. So now the question of if the film was a poor adaptation has become much more difficult to answer. It screws up the narrative so heavily, while still retaining the heart and soul of the source material. I guess my conclusion is that it's a flawed adaptation. It's a very entertaining experience that has both positives and negatives. Although it's nowhere near as entertaining as the manga, which is a true masterpiece, and I highly recommend it to anybody who's curious about it like I was. If you want to read the manga, it's available from Dark Horse Comics, and the movie's available on Hulu or Funimation's website if you're interested in checking it out. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you have any feedback, please leave a comment, and if you want to see more, feel free to subscribe as well. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.